Good evening, students. So I'll just check how many students are connected, then we'll start. Okay, let us just wait for 5 minutes. So in this session, we will try to cover up your instruction set. Okay, we'll see how various types of instructions are there and what are the considerations which are being followed. Okay, so we will see instruction formats, types of operation, addressing mode. We have already seen these things in lab, so I did not take this unit previously. Why? Because unless and until you have some knowledge regarding the basic machine instructions, you will not be able to relate the things properly. So first we covered these things up in lab. Now I think it is a good time to review these things, or at least you can understand how these things work. So let us start. So first is your instruction format. Okay, so basically what are the requirements of a machine instruction, or what does it show us, or what does it contain? I hope all of you have seen machine instructions like add a b, then move something to something. So what does a machine instruction convey, or what does it have basically? So please, can you answer? Say we are taking an instruction add a comma b. Okay, so this instruction, what it is going to do, it is going to add the content of b to a. Okay, and it is again going to store the result back into a. So this is your 8085 instruction that you all have done in your labs, right? So from this we can say that every machine instruction contains an opcode. Okay, so this is the heart of the machine instruction. It specifies what operation has to be performed. Okay, and this is basically a binary code, and I think I have showed it in lab that there is a data sheet from where you can find out the value of that particular opcode, right? You have seen that all the machine instructions that you have got, like add, multiply, all are having some numeric hexadecimal as well as some there was this table, right? So you can see that all of them have got some value. So next comes your source operand reference, means what will be the input to the instruction, and finally you have got what will be the output of that particular instruction. Okay, sometimes it also tells the processor where to fetch the next instruction after the instruction of this in or the current instruction is complete. Okay, So like we have seen some instructions, right? Like when we are using this register pairs, it uh, is getting incremented by 4 and this kind of things happen. So basically an instruction can specify this many number of parameters. Okay, is it clear? Any doubts? So moving next, instruction format. Okay, so instruction format. Okay, so this is a sample of a simple instruction. So what does it have? Opcode, operand reference, operand reference. Okay, so this, they are again telling there are some instruction formats, like it might be register based instruction, it might be an immediate instruction, or it might be a memory reference instruction. So this is based on the location of the operand. Also you can classify instruction into some types, like you might have seen this register instructions where there, then immediate, like ADI instruction you have done, right? So then your register instruction, like some whatever was related to your stack operations and this adding up this HL pair and this kind of thing. So these are some of the where some of the register based instruction. Sir, can just a second. Sir, can we consider go to of loop to be next instruction reference? No, exactly, because it is more related to control. Okay, so so again, based on the location of the operand, also you can classify your instruction format, or you can classify the type of the instruction that you want to have. Okay, so I think this is very easy to understand. So this is the sample format of a instruction. It has got an opcode at the beginning followed by the operands. So based on the number of operands, again you can sir, examples of next instruction reference. Okay, so basically you can take this thing like just a second, I'll just see the instruction list. Okay, I will tell this after the end of the class. Just I will open up the PDF and then I'll give you the example, because there are many instruction. I'll just see and I will tell you the appropriate one. Okay, so based on the number of operands, again you can have this instruction format, like 3 address instruction. Next you might have 2 address instruction, 1 address instruction. So based on the number of operands present in the instruction, you can again classify them as 1 address instruction, 2 address instruction, or 3 address instruction. Now again the uh, I mean operation is dependent upon the architecture, means it is basically dependent upon the architecture, what sort of or how, what addressing mode you want for your instruction. Should it be 1 address, should it be 2 address, should it be 3 address? Okay, so accordingly the interpretation is also going to change. Okay, so if you see here in this case, the figure A or the table A, you can see sub y ab. So what does it tell? Y is equal to a minus b. Okay, and if you see here, to address instruction sub y comma b, what does it mean? Sub y means you subtract y minus b and store the result back to y. So based on the type of instruction, the interpretation of the instructions also change. Okay, so I think it is intuitive to understand this. So whatever is the context, so based on this the interpretation will change. Okay, so it is again dependent upon your machine architecture. So different architectures have got different instruction format. It can be 2 address, it can be 3 address, and so on. Okay, so operations, I hope all of you know. So data transfer, arithmetic, logical conversion, IO, system control, transfer of control. Okay, so these are the basic operations which uh, or based on which the instructions have been designed. Okay, so you can have this data transfer operation like move. I hope all of you have done it in your labs. Move a comma b, sta, lda, and so on. Okay, so exchange was also there. Set, push, pop. So, Riyanka, you can take this as the example like LDA HL. If you specify this, then uh, actually the program counter will get incremented by 4 bytes. Whereas if you see other things, it was getting incremented by 2 bytes. So that might be the relation or that might be the differentiation. Okay. So next we have got this arithmetic instruction like add, subtract, multiply, divide, then absolute, negate. So these are also dependent upon the architecture of the processor that you are using. Means whatever operations are permitted by that particular CPU, so you can only perform this. So you have seen the datasheet of this 8085, sorry 8086. So there you I mean there were only say some 120 instructions, right? PDF name is instruction set. I have just shared the PDF before say the beginning of the class or before the start of the class. So arithmetic instructions, then you have got some logical instructions. So these are some of the logical operations which are permitted and or not. So I hope you all of you know these things, so there is no need to go in much details. Then transfer of control. So Riyanka, as you were asking, so JNZ and this JZ, so this will be classified as transfer of control. So these are basically used for this kind of operations. So I hope all of you are clear with this kind of operations, as because you have already implemented it in your labs. So next comes your IO. So if you are reading from a particular IO device or a IO port, so those instructions will be classified as your IO instructions. Okay, like it might be if you are going for a memory reference also, still it is a IO instruction. Okay, so I think there is nothing much to explain here. So next comes you can instructions can also be classified based on the addressing modes. Means what does this mean? The manner in which target address or effective address is identified within the instruction is called addressing mode. So what sort of addressing mechanism you are using to locate a particular operand? Okay, so based on this addressing mode also you can classify the instruction. So these are the types of addressing modes which are available: immediate addressing, direct addressing, indirect addressing, register, indirect addressing, displacement addressing, stack addressing. So these are some of the types. So please try to understand these things clearly, because these are also quite I mean important for your competitive exams, because questions are always asked on this immediate and this kind of addressing modes. Okay, So please try to read it from books also, although it is books, it is also having the same content. I thought that giving it in a PPT will be better for you to understand the things. Okay. Yes, Nobonita, what do you mean instructions set? I'm not clear. So is the connection buffering too much? I can see that today actually the connection is quite good because drop frames are only 0.9%, whereas in the previous sessions it was like 32% or so. Today actually it is in the software it is showing quite good, I mean your level of transmission. Whereas in the previous session dropped frames were roughly around your 32%. Yes, sometimes there might be some disturbance, and moreover, actually, you might have seen that I also publish the videos. If you miss somewhere or due to buffering problem, you are not able to understand. Okay, so addressing modes. So based on the manner in which target address or effective address is determined, you can again classify your instructions. Okay, based on the addressing, or sorry, these are the types of addressing modes which are available. Okay, so immediate, direct, indirect, register, indirect, displacement, and stack addressing. So we'll just see what these addressing modes are. So it is the simplest immediate addressing. This is the simplest form of addressing where the operand value is given directly in the instruction. Okay, so classic example is your ADI A comma say 05H, SUI B comma 01H. So these are the classic examples of immediate addressing, means you are giving the operand value directly in the instruction. Okay, so it is useful for defining constants or for setting initial values. So next we have got direct addressing. So just follow the diagrams also. Operand is, in this case, operand is given directly in the instruction. Okay, see the next case, direct addressing. What you are doing in case of your direct addressing. So here effective address is equal to a. Effective address is just the address of the operand. It only provides limited address space. Okay, so you are giving the address of the operand directly in the instruction. So this is your direct addressing mode. Means like you can take the example of say move a comma say some value, or sta to some value you can give. So what it will do, it will move that value or read the content of that memory location and place it in some register. So this might be example of your direct addressing. Next comes indirect addressing. Okay, so Hmm. Is the connection not stable? Which example do you want me to repeat? Okay, direct addressing, what you are doing is you are giving the address directly in the instruction, like sta some value you are giving, right? LDA some value. So those are the examples of your direct addressing. Okay. So next we have got indirect addressing. So what happens in indirect addressing? Here you need, means what, parent effective address is equal to a, means parenthesis specifies the content of a, neither the address of the operand not the operand. So here what happens is, whatever is given in the instruction, the address, it won't contain the operand. Instead, it will again refer to some other memory location which will be containing this operand. Okay, so that will be your indirect addressing, means you are not directly accessing the operand. Instead, the instruction, it is referring to some memory address which in turn will contain the operand at that particular address. Okay, so it is your indirect addressing. So after this, what you have got? We have got register addressing. So what happens, similar to direct addressing, address field refers to, so here instead of memory you are using a register, so you are storing the values directly in the register. Okay, so they have given some advantages and disadvantages. I think it is very easy to relate because registers only have some limited or registers are there in limited number inside your CPU, so you cannot have too much of flexibility there. And also advantage is only a small address field is needed. Okay, so the and time there is no no latency issued due to your memory reference, so it will be faster in execution. So register addressing. Next comes your register indirect addressing. So it is just like your indirect addressing. Here what you are doing is, instead of giving a memory location, you are giving a register value which will contain the address of the operand in your memory. So this is your register indirect addressing. Okay, so here also actually you require a single memory reference, but in case of your indirect addressing you actually require two memory access. Here one register value will be there which will be storing the address of the operand. Okay, so next what we have got is displacement addressing. So here what happens is, the instruction contains an starting address and some offset value. So how do you obtain the effective address? You will add the starting address, you can say, to the displacement. So by adding both of them you will get some value which will contain the operands. So This is known as your displacement addressing. Okay, so if you see here, EA or your effective address is A plus R. Okay, so it is actually quite I mean extensively used, okay, for programming and this kind of things. So displacement addressing, so it has three parts: relative addressing, index addressing, and base register addressing. So these are only some of the types of this displacement addressing. So here individual register like base register will be there, which will store the offset value, and which will store some starting address, and you will just add the offset value to determine the effective address. So this is your displacement addressing. And final one is your stack addressing. So I hope all of you know stack addressing like push pop. So here uh, this it has got a uh, push down list. So elements are appended to the top of the stack, and stack pointer is maintained in a register. The operation performed, so operation is performed at the top of the stack. So you have seen these examples in your lab classes. We have gone for this stack operations, right? Push some value, so it has got some address FFF. So backwards of that, it starts storing the values. And also you have seen that there is some SP stack pointer inbuilt in your CPU, which will contain the value for top of stack. Okay, so it has got this implicit addressing, means it does not require any addressing, only whatever will be there, it will be pushed or it will be stored on top of stack. Okay, so this is your stack addressing. So please read these things from your book. Why I thought of giving it in PPT is, if you I take a book, it will be very difficult to summarize the contents. Okay, or at least from initial point of view, it will be a bit difficult, because we are going through this video sessions. So physically it would have been easier to relate, but over this communication media, I don't think that you can relate it much better. So this PPT is there. So you can see in this particular, so this is the last slide. So here the advantages and principal disadvantages are given, so you can, we can read it. Immediate means what? No memory reference is needed. Limited operand magnitude. Direct addressing, simple limited address space. Indirect, so why it will be limited address space? Because based on the size of the instruction, the address will have only fixed number of bits, so you cannot have more than that. So indirect, large address space you can access, but it requires multiple memory references. Okay, register, no memory reference is required, but it is having limited address space. Register, indirect, large address space, extra memory reference is required. Displacement, it is flexible, but it is complicated for implementation, because it requires separate control logic for implementing this displacement mechanism. I think yes, you can find these things. I'll just check. Just a second. It will be there. These are basic things. It is okay. You can. It is there. Just see, 11. It is there. Okay, chapter number 11. It is there. If you want, just read it. I have explained the basic contents. Okay, so stack addressing, what is the advantage? No memory reference is required, but it has got limited applicability. Why? Because to implement anything in terms of stack, you need some fixed ordering. Okay, so it is sometimes difficult to find this postfix notation, I mean expression or this kind of things. So it has got some limited applicability. So is it clear? Any doubts? So now should we start with object oriented programming? If Tikar, you can watch the videos later. I think it won't be. Should we start? Okay. So in this object oriented programming, we will try to cover up your virtual functions. Not really, I think we cannot cover this thing today entirely, but I'll just give you some basic idea. What does it mean? Okay, so polymorphism, I think. Okay, in live session, if you want, or if you are, if you feel that you are not able to understand the things, okay, we'll, or at least I can give you some materials or contents. It is okay. I can understand that live session you can interact, but offline you can't. But at least you have heard the things, right? To an extent, so you can relate it later on in the video. And in case if you are not able to understand, so please feel free to contact. I am always there, no issues. So page hunt number 265. So polymorphism I hope all of you know what does polymorphism mean. What is polymorphism with respect to C++ or your object oriented programming? What is polymorphism? So polymorphism basically means ability to take various forms, right? So with respect to C++, you have got functions or your polymorphism. So you have got function overloading, operator overloading. So what you are doing is you are using the same function or operator for different functionalities. So that is your polymorphism. Okay, so what is happening actually? So whenever you are trying to define this polymer or this functions for polymorphism or operators, if you are trying to overload it, so what is happening is you are declaring them beforehand, right? Before running the program you are declaring them. So this information is known to the compiler at compile time. Okay, so the compiler is able to select the function appropriately and able to give you the corresponding output. So this is called early binding or compile time polymorphism. Means the information relating to your polymorphism or this ability to take various or ability to perform various operations. So this entire thing is given to your compiler at compilation time. So this is known as your compile time polymorphism, and it is also known as your static binding. So now just see the example given here. Class A int x, class then public it has got, then void show function, again class B public A. Okay, so what does this statement mean? Class B public A, what does this particular statement mean? What is this particular statement? What is it? Yes, you are basically inheriting from class A, right? So B is getting derived from class A. Now if B is also having this show function, so we have seen how to resolve this in your inheritance, right? You can use this membership operation to associate the particular function with the particular class, right? Now what, imagine a scenario if the now if you are using this class resolution operator to specify it, again it will be compile time. Now Say suppose if you have got a program where the requirement is not known in advance. So you have got student, say for example consider a class student. Now next say engineering students, you have got one more class which is deriving the attributes from student class. Now both of them have got some function, say show or this kind of thing. Now the requirement is not known to you in advance. Only while you execute the program based on the input of the user, you want to call the appropriate function. Okay, so this is known as your runtime polymorphism. Means the information is not known to the compiler beforehand, but you want to access or perform the function at runtime. Okay, although the functions are having same name, but still you are not able to distinguish which functions will be required. So based on the input from the user or during the running or the runtime of the program, appropriate function will be called. So this is your runtime polymorphism. So just see here the diagram. Polymorphism one, it has got compile time polymorphism. On the other hand, it has got runtime polymorphism. So for implementing compile time polymorphism, you have got function overloading, operator overloading. And for runtime polymorphism, you have got virtual functions. Okay, so this is also this concept of runtime polymorphism is also known as late binding, whereas the previous one was known as your early binding. So it is also known as late binding or dynamic binding. Why it is dynamic? Because the requirement to call a specific function with the same name is not known in advance. It is only during runtime you are to, or based on the decision of the user, appropriate function is going to get called. Okay, so we will see these virtual functions and everything. So it actually requires quite a lot of things. So we need to go through pointers first, then we'll come up to your virtual functions. Now I hope the context is clear why or where the virtual function is used. Okay, so some of you, I have seen in Google Forms you have posted that you are not able to understand virtual functions. So unless and until you understand inheritance, it is very difficult to understand virtual functions. So first I covered up your inheritance, and then now we will see this virtual function. Okay, so next we have got pointers. So I hope these things are not that difficult. You all of you have gone through this. So what is a pointer? You know, pointing to the address of a particular variable. How do you access it with n%? They say here they have given the basic syntax. So you have to use this star symbol in front of the variable which you want to declare as a pointer. Okay, so and next, how you can assign the value ptr is equal to n%a. So these things are not that new, so just go through it once. So now in C++, manipulation of pointers are also permitted. Okay, means you can divide, you can subtract, you can add the pointer variables. Okay, so here they have given this some simple examples where they have actually changed the pointer values. Okay, so just go through this pointer expression and pointer arithmetic. It is not that difficult. Just you will change the content of the pointer variable. Like, see, they have incremented, they have decremented the pointer variable. Okay, now pointers can be used with arrays also. I hope all of you know how to declare a pointer for array. So you will just assign the value of the starting variable or the starting member of the array to the pointer variable. So this will or this, with this you can access the entire array. Okay, so I hope all of you have done these examples in C and your lab classes. So if you have doubts, please ask, whether any sort of doubts if you are having. So moving to the next topic, you have got arrays of pointer. So you can also declare array of pointers, right? So 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 you have got arrays of pointers where you can create, I mean, array of pointer variables, and you can assign the values. Okay, you can also use pointers to I mean take the I mean assign some string values to pointers, and so on. Next, if you see here, you have got something known as pointer to functions. So it is also possible to declare a pointer to a function. So how do you declare it? So you have got this data type followed by, or within the parenthesis you have got this function name preceded by an asterisk, and again you have got some braces. So here, if you read it from here, C++ provides two types of function pointers that point to static member functions, and function pointers that point to non-static member functions. So these two function pointers are incompatible with each other. The function pointers that point to the non-static member functions requires hidden arguments. Like other variables, we can declare a function pointer in C++. It takes the following form. Okay, as we know, the data type is any valid data types used in C++. The function name is the name of the function, which must be preceded by an asterisk. The function name is any valid name of function. So this is the example that they have given. So remember that declaring a pointer only creates a pointer. It does not create actual function. For this, we must define the task which is to be performed by the function. The function must have the same return type and argument. So here they have given an example which you can take. So what does this example tell us? Just a second, please. I'll see whether the stream is active. So we'll just see the example. So what does it, or what is it conveying? So hash include iostream.age typedef void function pointer int. So here, if you see here, the I mean void is the return type, and fun pointer is the name of the function pointer and the data types that the function is accepting or receiving. Okay, so next you see void add inti ij. So this is just addition function, subtract function that they have defined. Next fun ptr. Okay, so if you see here, they have actually created a type definition for this particular function pointer. Okay, so they are telling that this function pointer is, I mean receiving two parameters as input to the function, and it is returning void or it is returning nothing from the function. Okay, so if you see here fun ptr, so ptr is equal to n%add, means they are now assigning this function pointer to point to the add function. Okay, next ptr 1 2, so with this statement they will actually call this particular add function, so it will get executed. Next what they are doing, again they are assigning the function pointer to subtract function. Okay, and then they are giving the value and it will get executed. Okay, so is it clear? Function pointer. Any doubts? Okay, then okay, so that will be enough for today. So we will again continue tomorrow from pointers to object, and then we will see your this virtual functions later on. Okay, so oh yes, one more thing, this pointer is there, and then pointer to derived class, and then virtual functions. Okay, so we will see these things tomorrow if time permits. So we'll take both architecture and object oriented programming. So we'll stop today here. Okay, then thank you very much for listening. So I'll end the stream now. And also those who are having problems with buffering, you can watch the video later on, because I'll publish the video say within 1 to 2 hours you will get the video tomorrow same time 8:30. Okay.